All right, let's just jump right in. Today, we're tackling a piece by Benoit Nounier-Lapierre called Transobjective Sovereignty and Quadratic Decay. And yeah, I know, that title is, a lot. It's a real workout for the brain, but I promise you, if you stick with me, what's inside is a totally radical way to think about AI, colonialism, and, well, the future.
And boom, right out of the gate, we get hit with a sentence like this. I mean, come on. It's dense, it's super academic, and frankly, it feels like it's designed to be a little intimidating. Metabolization? Substrate? Liturgy? What are we even talking about here?
Exactly. If that was your first thought, you're not alone. That's the whole point of us being here. We're going to take that feeling of, huh, and turn it into, oh, okay. We're going to decode this thing together.
Because that's really what we're doing. We're cracking a code. This whole paper is like a new language for understanding how AI can either repeat the mistakes of the past or it can help us build a genuinely different kind of future. So let's get our code-breaking hats on.
Okay, first things first. We have to understand the problem that this whole framework is even trying to solve. Why are so many decolonial thinkers looking at the way AI is developing and getting, well, deeply concerned?
The problem has a name, and it is a heavy one. Epistemicide. It literally means the killing of knowledge, the wiping out of one way of knowing by another, more dominant one. And in AI, this is happening all the time. When you train a model almost exclusively on data from the global north, it doesn't just ignore other ways of seeing the world, it actively erases them.
And look, this isn't some abstract philosophical idea. It's happening in very real ways. You've got data extraction, where cultural data is basically mined like it's oil or gold. You've got what's called ghost labor, where underpaid workers, say in Kenya, are doing really psychologically damaging content moderation to keep AI platforms clean for us. And then there's what the author calls the tokenic cut. That's the moment a model just can't process a non-Western idea or a word in another language, so it just cuts it. Gone. It's erased.
So the problem seems pretty clear, right? But this is where things get really interesting. The author says, hold on. Even the people who are critiquing AI are kind of stuck. They're using an old playbook that just isn't powerful enough to actually fix this.
So take a look at this. Most of the criticism we hear operates in what's called a dyadic frame. It's a two-sided fight. Colonizer versus colonized. North versus south. It's a tug of war. But this new framework suggests we need to shift to a quadratic frame. Forget two sides. Think of four interacting quadrants. This lets us see the whole mess, not as a simple back and forth, but as this complex, messy, nonlinear web of relationships.
And that brings us right to the heart of the whole thing, the double transversal, transjective, quadratic model, or DTQM for, well, it's not really short, is it? It's a total mouthful, I know. But trust me, every single one of those words is doing some really heavy lifting. So let's break it down.
So here's how these pieces all fit together. You start with double transversal. That's a feedback loop that cuts across all the typical power structures. Then transjective comes in and completely blurs the line between the observer and the thing being observed. They start to change each other. And then, this is the kicker, quadratic tells us that these interactions aren't simple and linear. They're exponential. A small problem can accelerate into a huge one really fast. It's not a straight line, it's a curve that's getting steeper and steeper.
Okay, so that's the theory, which is dense. But what does this new model actually let us do? How does it change how we see things? Well, let's watch it completely rewire a huge concept like sovereignty. This slide just lays it all out perfectly. The current AI economy, it's an extraction economy. Think of it like a stack. You got Congolese cobalt at the bottom, Kenyan labor in the middle, and northern capital at the very top. All the value flows one way, up and out. The alternative this model proposes is a living flat metabolism. It's not a stack, it's a closed loop. Production, labor, computation, it all happens inside the same community. The value doesn't get extracted, it circulates and actually feeds the system it came from. And this way of thinking leads to a really powerful takedown of this idea of leapfrogging. You've probably heard this. The idea that nations in the global south can just skip all the old dirty technology and jump right to the front of the line. The author says this whole way of thinking is a trap.
See, the problem isn't trying to skip rungs on the ladder. The problem is the ladder itself. It's this whole idea that there's one single path of development that everybody has to climb. This model just dissolves the latter, and instead it gives us 4 ways of experiencing time, all at once. You've got the ancestral past, the diasporic present, the embodied moment, and an Afro-optimist future. Progress isn't a straight line up, it's this beautiful, complex dance between all 4.
Which brings us to the final move, and honestly the most powerful part of this whole argument. The goal of all this crazy, complex theory isn't just to point out what's wrong, it's about building something totally new.
Now, the author is really clear here. That critical, resistant tone you hear in a lot of decolonial thought, it is absolutely necessary. It's a direct response to real, ongoing harm. That critique has to be made, and it has to be heard.
But critique can't be the end of the story. It just can't. After you resist, you have to generate something new. The ultimate point isn't just to tear down the old broken system, it's to create a new one.
And this, right here, is the end game. The goal is to create a kind of decolonial AI that isn't just reacting to the system built in Silicon Valley. It's an AI that is, quote, metabolically prior to it. It builds its own foundation, its own logic, its own metabolism, from its own soil. It doesn't need to fight for a seat at the table, because it's busy building its own house.
So I guess I'll just leave you with this question. What if this whole conversation about the AI race is completely missing the point? What if winning isn't about running faster on a track someone else built? What if it's about creating a fundamentally different kind of system? A whole new metabolism for how technology, knowledge, and community work together from the ground up? That's the challenge, and the possibility, this framework leaves us with.